2017, I had a hip replacement and I was doing everything correctly during my physical therapy. And guess what? I broke my femur during physical therapy. Now, granted, it's complex as to why the femur broke. I think for me, it was not following my own instincts and allowing my physical therapist to push me to walk up an incline when I felt like I wasn't ready. And again, I think it's unclear. I was 55 pounds heavier then. And now, when my surgeon said over a year ago, I needed my second hip replaced, listen, I wasn't just nervous, I was terrified. In fact, he said I needed the hip replaced actually 2 years ago. So I had the hip replaced last year, but the year before, I just couldn't face it. And so I totally get it. And I understand the fear around hip replacements. So that's what I want to talk about today because truthfully, it's been a year since my second hip replacement. I'm doing magnificent. And I want to share with you my journey because it was not without complications, but it shows you that you can get on the other side, no matter what your age is. I'm Mary Catherine George. I'm a health psychologist. I've been working in research for about 30 years. And I come on here to share my own health journey and also to talk about all things wellness and longevity so that we can have the best version of who we are into our 80s and 90s. I would be ever so grateful if you did and liking and sharing because I feel like as we get older, need all the support we can get, right? So let me just tell you, I was so afraid 2 years ago that I needed a second hip replacement that I literally postponed it for over a year. And over a year, I suffered. I suffered with horrible pain, using a cane, limited walking, struggling. And finally, it was prior to my nephew's wedding a year ago that I decided to bite the bullet and say yes to my hip replacement. And frankly, at this stage, a year out after my second hip replacement, I'm thrilled. I'm walking better. There's no pain. I feel stronger than ever. I'm able to walk now 3+ miles. I'm doing my weightlifting. It's a wonderful outcome. But I have to tell you, the two hip replacements both came with some complexities. So as I shared with you, my first hip replacement, I broke my femur. And I guess we really all need to understand that surgery can go really well and it can really be successful and you end up at home and things are going super well and you're doing the physical therapy sections and exercising. But I feel like I really didn't trust my own sensibility of where I was in physical therapy. And I allowed someone to encourage me to do more than I should have in that first hip replacement and the physical therapy. And something went wrong. I've had to femur that broke. And frankly, I am so amazed at how I recovered from that. It's truthfully daunting when I think back about it. Because once I had the hip replacement and they gave me the broken femur, I then had to deal with not putting any weight on that leg at all for 6 weeks. Truthfully, that was a challenge beyond belief. But in some ways, I'm really happy that I had tools to help me. I used my mindfulness, I used my self hypnosis. And yes, were there times that I really struggled? Without a doubt. But I always felt like I had something I could go back to. And I wish in the end, I really felt like I could have followed my instincts about the physical therapy. And then I prepared myself for the second hip replacement. A year ago, prior to the hip replacement, I did what's called prehab. I really wanted to have someone helping me do some of the smallest steps to help me keep motivated in the leg lifts and the side lifts and the back lifts so that I would have a framework of physical therapy that I could return to after the surgery. I think what wasn't expected was that I had some complexities that were due to a blood clot. And I feel blessed that it was not complicated, but I did have to go back in for a second surgery. They removed the blood clot, everything was fine. And I started my physical therapy. It was delayed, but frankly, I did a much slower physical therapy process. I felt like I had a framework that was very clear about what I could and couldn't do. And I feel like I had a much better sense of what I needed as a support system. Now, granted, I don't think you need to go through a hip replacement to understand what you need. I think that you must give yourself the opportunity to think through what will you need. You're going to be using a walker. You're going to be using cane. You're going to be limited in how long you can stand on your leg and move it. But slowly you will regain a sense of being okay. It will be a little bit hesitant, a little bit scary at the beginning, but as you work through it, you will feel stronger. And I believe that the best thing to do is to just take action. Talk to your physical therapist. I wish I had shared that I was afraid to the physical therapist about walking up an incline. I wish I had told him, listen, I don't know. I feel hesitant. Could we possibly maybe do that in a couple of days? And perhaps that would have changed things. I don't know. But I do feel like now, after losing the weight and really thinking about this second hip replacement and doing what we call prehab, it really helped me approach the second hip replacement in a much better place. And even though I did have a minor complication, I was able to get through it with no problem and then had an easy time of physical therapy for the remainder of August and in September. And then I was no longer using a cane by the end of September and ready for my little nephew's wedding in October. So truthfully, it all worked out well. And yes, was I afraid at times? Definitely. But I think if we allow ourselves to recognize we do have some fear, we can take ourselves and go a little slower, that the hip replacement process is okay. And it helps you prepare for the surgery and the recovery because I really allowed myself to suffer way too long after I knew that I had to have a second hip replacement. And it was all because I was allowing my fear to keep me from taking action for what would be a better choice for my health. So it delayed me getting a second hip replacement. It delayed me really moving forward with moving and becoming healthier with my movement. We really need to allow ourselves to know what is it that's going to help us have the best hip replacement recovery possibly. Because typically, I don't think we ever understand how surgeries can become complicated with side effects and sometimes these things about blood clots. But I think if we approach it, that everyone's doing their very best and we ask questions of your team, ask questions and share what you're afraid of. I so wish I had shared in that first hip replacement how I was afraid to walk up the incline. I was afraid to go a little further. I felt it was a little too soon. And I think maybe if I had voiced that, I would have possibly avoided pushing myself beyond what I thought I was capable of doing. So if you're preparing or thinking about the fact that you might have to have a hip replacement, just know that put your questions down on paper. Allow yourself to understand what your fears are. Any fears of side effects, any fears of physical therapy, any fears of anything about the surgery. of how they've gotten to the point where they're doing amazing things. My brother, his hip replacement was super simple. He went home the same day and he didn't really do physical therapy. His doctor said, just start walking as much as you can and do it until several times a day. That's all he recommended. So I think that if you can really talk to your surgeon, to your physical therapy team, to the team of people who are going to help you and support you, you will do fine in preparing for your hip replacement. And there's nothing to be afraid of, because even though I had some really challenging times with the first and second hip replacement, I'm on the other side of it and I feel fantastic. I'm walking 3 miles. I'm doing exercises with weights. I'm able to do much more. And I'm even contemplating how I can start going back to a yoga class and start going to a swim class. So don't let your fears prevent you from taking action, because that's what I allowed myself. I let my fear go unspoken. I let my fear prevent me from taking action. And so I suffered longer than necessary. Allow yourself to hear what you're afraid of. Tell the doctors, tell your family members, help people advocate for you so that your fears can be somehow addressed, so that you're going to feel more confident and you have a plan about things that you're afraid of doing. And I believe that you can make your hip replacement be super successful. And I would love to hear, for those people who've had hip replacements, what you did to help yourself approach your surgery and then after your surgery, your recovery. So please think about subscribing. I would love to see you here. This is me, Mary Catherine. I would love it if you would like and share. And remember, we have this one precious life. Let's live it to the fullest, because don't we all want to be the very best version of who we are into our 80s and 90s? I do. So let's do it, no matter what we're facing when it comes to surgery. Okay? Be well, my friends. Bye-bye. So thank you so much for joining me at Healthy by George. I hope you found the information inspiring and that it encourages you on your wellness journey. Because remember, your body, your well-being are a most precious gift, and every tiny action taken daily can make a huge difference. I hope the information here is educational purposes and is not meant to replace your medical care. See your doctor and talk about what works for you. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continuing creating content that inspires and empowers you to live your best life. Goodbye for now, and join me again at the next Healthy by George.